The Late Bronze Age, 1500 to 1200 BCE. The beginning of the Late Bronze Age is described best through events which most likely occurred with the expulsion of a people called the Hyksos from Egypt. The Hyksos, who are not to be confused with the Israelites, were a generally Semitic group from in and around Canaan who had invaded and conquered Egypt around 1720 BCE. The Hyksos were expelled and Egypt was reunified by Pharaoh Ahmose around 1550 to 1525 BCE. The expulsion helped strengthen Egypt both militarily and economically. That renewed national enthusiasm in Egypt also caused a renewed interest in the land of Canaan. The large city-states in the land of Canaan, which had flourished during the Middle Bronze Age, fell into disrepair and decline in the Late Bronze Age. A few things contributed to that decline. First was Egypt's renewed desire to control the international coastal highway, the Via Maris. To control the economic inflow from that highway, Egypt reduced the kings of the Middle Bronze Age city-states to mere servant cities. Second, Egypt's constant demand for tribute money did not allow enough money for domestic projects within the city. That in turn caused the neglect and decline of the city. Third, many of the large cities show multiple destructions during this period, which is most likely due to the turmoil with Egypt, although some of the destruction could be due to local entities taking advantage of the weakened condition of the once powerful city-states. The Amarna letters, discovered in 1887, provide us with a fascinating look into this period and the interaction between Egypt and its neighbors. Elizabeth Knott of the Department of Ancient Near Eastern Art at the Metropolitan Museum of Art describes the Amarna letters saying, "The Amarna letters are a group of several hundred clay tablets inscribed with cuneiform, wedge-shaped writing that date to the 14th century BC and were found at the site of Tel El Amarna, the short-lived capital of ancient Egypt during the reign of Amenhotep IV, or Akhenaten, circa 1353 to 1336 BC. The majority of the tablets are letters, hence the modern designation Amarna letters, written from rulers of the lands north of Egypt. But a few are letters from the Egyptian king, and there are also tablets inscribed with myths, epics, syllabaries, lexical texts, and other lists, the kind of texts that were used to learn cuneiform writing. These texts are housed today in museums and collections across the world, including 2 examples in the collection of the Metropolitan Museum. The Amarna letters, along with other texts from the cities of Mari, Nuzi, Alak, Ugarit, and Hattusas, mention a people group called Habiru or Apiru. Scholars have noted the close etymology between the word Habiru and Hebrew, which was the name ascribed to Abraham in Genesis 14:13 and applied to his offspring. Etymology is the study of the origin of words, which shed light on ancient, original meanings as well as whether they are native to the language or borrowed from another language. The prominent American scholar George E. Wright concluded that we are fairly safe in assuming at least an indirect connection. This etymological connection has caused scholars to raise and debate the question, are the Habiru of the Amarna letters the same as the Hebrews of the Bible? The answer seems to be both yes and no. Consider the following. The words Habiru and Hebrew are etymologically related. Both groups were Semitic foreigners who lived in Egypt. Both groups were non-citizens, not associated with cities. Both groups lived on the boundaries of Egyptian society. But despite the similarities, scholars agree that the Habiru and Hebrews are not the exact same people group. Egyptologist James Hoffmeyer explains, saying, "In recent decades, the association has been discouraged, largely because Habiru is understood to be a sociological term, not indicative of any one particular ethnic group." Hoffmeyer notes, however, this generally accepted meaning need not preclude the term Habiru from being applied to the Hebrews who were dislocated in Egypt and then again when they returned to Canaan. His point being that the Egyptians most likely used the term Habiru in an unfavorable manner towards Semitic outsiders, which included the Hebrews. Considering the Egyptians had been ruled by Semitic Hyksos for a couple of hundred years, this conclusion seems to fit well. Egyptian sentiment toward any Semitic group during that time would have most likely been negative. Furthermore, this explanation works well with the biblical story. In Genesis 37-50, we are told about Joseph's entry into Egypt. Being blessed by Yahweh, despite the horrible situations, Joseph rises to high ranks in the Egyptian government. Providentially, Joseph takes care of his family in a famine situation, and they subsequently relocate from Canaan to Egypt. And as the book of Exodus begins, the writer tells us, "Now there arose a new king over Egypt, who did not know Joseph. And he said to his people, 'Behold, the people of Israel are too many and too mighty for us. Come, let us deal shrewdly with them, lest they multiply. And if war breaks out, they join our enemies and fight against us and escape from the land.'" Exodus 1:8-10. Once Moses enters the biblical story in Exodus 2, the late Bronze Age would have been sufficiently developed and evolving toward the Iron Age. That transition from the late Bronze Age to the Iron Age would be one of major changes in Canaan. The Philistines became a major player in the action. They settle in the southwest coastal region of Canaan and advance the use of iron as the dominant metal. But most importantly for the biblical story, a people called Israel will establish themselves in Canaan, fully convinced that Yahweh had given them that land. In the next video, we will discuss how the Iron Age and biblical story connect.
Thank you for watching this video. Don't forget to like and share, and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any future videos.